a lot of what we do is we look at how people are succeeding in the pop space. Most of classical musicians who are very successful, they do the competition route. They're penniless for about 8 years. They hopefully get some good management. So it's kind of reverse engineering it and seeing how can I be more in control rather than just putting all of my fate into a panel.
The following is a conversation I recently had with violinist Jinty McTavish, a member of ATLYS, a crossover string quartet comprised of 4 strong, unique, incredibly talented women. ATLYS's music has reached a global audience around the world with over 8 million streams on Spotify, and they've performed at legendary venues including the Red Rocks Amphitheater and the Gorge Amphitheater. Throughout this conversation, we talk about ATLYS's origin story, their unique business model and streams of income, and how they create such unbelievably stunning pieces of music, their exact process from start to finish. What I find most fascinating about ATLYS is their rare ability to work as a team and be equal partners despite living across the country from each other. I had the most incredible time connecting with Jinty, and I know a lot of people are really going to benefit from the insights shared in this conversation. This is the Music Work Podcast, and my name is Alison Legendre. Please enjoy. All right. Thanks so much for joining me today here, Jinty. We have Jinty from ATLYS, and I am so excited to dive into this conversation. I know that I'm going to learn a lot, and I think that a lot of our listeners will too. So let's get started here. So, Jinty, would you mind just starting by just sharing a little bit about what ATLYS is and how you guys got started?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am the violinist in a string quartet called ATLYS. We started about 7.5 years ago, and we defined ourselves as a lady power crossover string quartet. Some people like to put us in the genre of cinematic pop. We've got kind of cinematic vibes. We use looping pedals and electronics, and all of the music that we perform is written either by us or for us exclusively. So, it's been kind of a wild journey, but we play like all kinds of off-the-wall stuff. If it's hasn't been done before, we love to do it.
Amazing. Okay, so that just answered a few questions for me already because I listened to you guys and I'm just like, how does this happen? You guys sound so unique and just tight and energetic. So I see you're using some tools like looping and things to help make that happen. So I'm excited to dive more into how you guys navigate things musically because it just sounds so good. Everyone should actually pause and just go save them on Spotify and make sure you come back and listen to what they're up to because it really is quite unique. No, I love what you guys do. So, okay, let's go back to just how this all happened though, because that's the other fascinating thing that, we've talked a little bit before. And I think how you guys got started and the fact that, you're such a good team working together, I find so fascinating. So how did you guys meet?
Yeah, so we all met in Chicago. I mean, 2 of us are twins. The violinist and the cellist are twins. So obviously they met much earlier than that and have been playing together their whole lives. But I met the 2 of them at Northwestern. We were there for our master's degrees, and they went out on a limb and were just like, hey, want to be in our chamber group? And I was like, wow, you don't even know what I sound like, but okay. And we just really clicked there. And then all of us worked in the Civic Orchestra of Chicago. And so Rita, the violist, was going to DePaul University. And so she was in the civic program at the same time as me and Genevieve, and also Sabrina would occasionally sub. And we did a program there called the Bach Marathon, where we would go all over the city with Yo-Yo Ma and play Bach Brandenburg Concerti all over for different types of people. And it was such an exhilarating experience that Rita actually ran up to me while we were waiting backstage to get on for our final concert of the evening and was like, I just had this idea. What if we formed a group that would perform in all kinds of spaces that are unconventional and just basically create a sound that everyone can grab onto and that would help our centuries old instruments stay relevant. And I was like, yeah, sign me up. And Genevieve, of course, asked her twin sister to join. And so we formed that winter. We sat down and we played, and we had such a great chemistry. And we were like, yeah, I think this is working. Let's do this. And so we auditioned for our first job on Lincoln Center stage on Holland America Line a couple months after that in New York City. And we won that position. And that enabled us to kind of marinate and really get to know each other, get to know our playing styles, and play over 1,000 concerts, 3 shows a night, 6 days a week, for a span of 13 months in total. And so then after that, we decided we wanted to keep going. And so has our story unraveled.
That's amazing, because it's just so rare to see a quartet that like is so committed and stays together and is such like, everyone is having the same vision. And you kind of described it well there, that you guys are, just interested in keeping your instruments of centuries old relevant, and just, exploring new ways to like create music and make, some really unique sounds that people can all kind of latch onto. So I love that. And it makes sense. It is rare that you guys are like able to like be such a good team for so long, and I love to see that. So it makes sense that I think, would you say it was the chemistry you guys had and just the vision that has kept you, together all this time? Is that kind of the glue you feel, or do you think there's something else going on there?
Yeah, I mean, being in a long-term string quartet is a magical combination of determination, discipline, but also personalities. It has to have a very magical combination of personalities that are also willing to bend. And, it's like being in a marriage. So we've done a lot of work to figure out our different personality types, how we handle different situations. I mean, we've gone through our fair share of very difficult things together where, a lot of people would probably call it quits. But we just kind of clung to each other in those moments and agreed to, just have empathy and try to learn about each other and learn the ways in which we can further our relationship and our business together, and rather than giving up.
Right. Well, such a good lesson, because hard times always do come, and when you're working with people, like navigating that and being able to, stay true to your mission and stick together, I think you get stronger through those things probably, right?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, amazing. So I'm curious, like going back to the beginning versus where you are now, like what was the original vision for the quartet, and how does that differ from where you guys find yourself now, or if at all?
No, absolutely. I mean, so the first thing that we actually did together as a quartet was collaboration. We were working strictly with other artists. We worked with an amazing singer called Fatai, was one of our first collaborations. She's big in Australia and on YouTube. And then we also worked with another indie rock guy named Brennan. And those were our first videos that we made. Now, when we were reaching the end of our work on the ship, we were like, well, what's next? Is this just going to solely be a collaboration thing that's dependent on having other people on stage with us? Or do we want to continue to like build our performance brand and our own things so that we don't have to rely just on other people? So the collaboration has stayed throughout the entire ATLYS. We've always loved collaborating, and I think more recently it's looked like more collaborations with composers, but we still do a lot of work in recording with singers and songwriters and all kinds of people. But we also have a huge focus on our own music and releasing quite frequently releases on Spotify, and keeping up our own brand and developing our own brand as well. So, and I mean, couple years ago, one of the biggest collaborations that we've ever done was with Seven Lions, the huge DJ, and we found ourselves performing at Red Rocks and the Gorge Amphitheater with him. And those are things like we couldn't have planned. Like we didn't know we'd be doing EDM of all things. So it's been a really fun journey, and I think we're very open. Like we're not necessarily like we have to stay on this road. Like if some a great opportunity comes our way, we're always down for it.
Interesting. So it seems like for you guys, it was, an open-ended exploration of just, hey, let's see what we can make a quartet sound like and do, and be willing to experiment. And that kind of led you in some unpredictable paths that were cool. And you guys have just been kind of improvising,
Yes,
so to
yeah.
speak, in some sense, but, with the intention of really exploring what a quartet can do. Would you say that kind of feels like what the journey's been like?
Absolutely. Yeah, we've kind of evolved over time. We started just writing everything ourselves, and now we have a
Right.
small team of composers that we work with quite
Oh,
often
wow.
because they're just
Okay.
faster than we are.
Right.
But we still write for different things that don't have such tight deadlines. So yeah, it's been really cool to see things grow and work out the logistics of how that works.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm curious, how would you describe like where you are now? Like what is the business model if you could describe it? Like you mentioned Spotify is one thing that's going on and I know you have like your own concerts and collaborations. Like how would you describe it? How does it fit together for you guys?
Oh gosh. I would say so. We've got performances that we do.
Mm-hmm.
We also do a lot of remote recording. That's a huge part of our business. So,
Wow.
if you go to our website, you'll see a form. And so we've got some
Mm-hmm.
people like searching on Google because I don't think many string quartets have that. It's like string
Right.
quartet that can record. So we get hits from like all over the world for that. That's very
Oh my
interesting and
word.
cool.
Uh-huh.
And then we love education. That's another big part of what we do. So,
Mm-hmm.
and that goes alongside concerts. Like if we're like this weekend, for example, we're going to be in Iowa and we have two presentations that we're giving at schools, but we're also collaborating with composition programs. We're working with O Academy this year to work with their composers and are also doing another residency for a college in the suburbs of Chicago with their composers program. And then we're also the quartet in residence this summer for the Elgin Youth Symphony's Chamber Music Institute. So we love doing education. We've also done presentations for colleges, teaching students about marketing and alternative ways of making a living as a musician, other than just, being a member of an orchestra, which of course is
Mm-hmm.
amazing. But if you're not
Right.
passionate about that, just, talking about the ways that you can make that work. Um, so, yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any other facets to our business. We want there to be more, but eventually, like, we'd love to have courses be a part of what we do. Um, but yeah, I think that's about covers it for now.
Amazing. Yeah. And again, I'm just seeing this pattern. You guys are just focused on, the music and just making the music the best it can be. And it seems like different ways that can apply to different sort of ways for you guys to contribute and add value to people. So let's talk about the shows to start. So you guys are doing concerts, and were those traveling? Were those local? What does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, right now, generally, we do a lot of traveling, and one
Right.
big part of that is actually that we are a long distance string quartet. So most of the quartets you will see are based in, like, there's a couple quartets based in Chicago, and so they mostly
Mm-hmm.
concertize around Chicago. They're amazing. Um, all over the place, that's the case. But
Mm-hmm.
because we're spread out a little bit, there's two of us in Chicago, one in Iowa, and one in Los Angeles. We have a lot of networks. So through that, we get called a lot of different places. Sometimes we play concerts at universities. This year, we're doing a residency at Purdue University for a few days, giving concerts there. And we actually just signed on with a agency for cruises called Blackburn. So we will be potentially going to headline on cruises around the world, which is kind of full circle. But this time we get to
Right.
headline.
Okay.
So,
Amazing.
yeah. So we do all kinds of performances, but mainly people always ask if, oh, you guys must do so many weddings. Like, can you pay my wedding? No, we actually don't do many weddings. We're because you have to fly us in. It's not many people want to pay for that. So,
Right.
so yeah,
Fair
most
enough.
of what we do is chamber music societies, performance arts centers, and then we love to play in unconventional spaces. So like the occasional show at a bar or a smaller venue.
Right. Okay. So, and just in case people missed that, these guys started out like, I think part of what bonded you guys so well was that first cruise ship experience. How long were you on a boat together? Like, did you say it was 11 months or something like that?
In total, 13 months, and that was
Wow.
spread out. The first contract was 4.5 months. Then we did
Mm-hmm.
6, and then we did 3.
Right,
So,
right.
so yeah, and it was an experience, but we loved it. And actually, how we got our start on YouTube was, we would film in all the ports. We would fly out videographers and stuff. They could stay in our room for free,
Wow.
and we'd go out in the ports when we weren't playing at night, and we would film music videos in cool places. So we're
That's
excited to
perfect.
hopefully start doing that a little bit more again.
Right, right. How much would you say that, like, being on the cruise ship together was like instrumental to you guys being able to, just create that bond that kept you together? Would you say that was a big part, or you think it would have happened anyways?
Oh my gosh, 1,000,000%. It's that
Yeah.
because
Right.
it's hard when you're straight out of school, right? And you
Mm-hmm.
need to make money, and it's hard to set aside those times to rehearse and like, okay, well, I guess maybe we can try to organize. We were essentially getting paid to be in a residency together, and
Mm-hmm.
we were getting paid to rehearse together and
Mm-hmm.
paid to do all of these things. And so people like to call it our like Beatles time, like the
Right.
Beatles when they're in Germany.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it was invaluable
Right.
for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Like if you're getting along with, the same group of people after 13 months being on a cruise ship together, that's a good sign that you guys have something
Yeah, and we heard that
worth
there were
pursuing.
some groups that did not make it through that.
Right. Oh my gosh.
Some people come in as a preformed like career group and they'd break up.
Oh no. It's testing
Definitely puts
times.
it in a compressed
Right, right.
space. Yeah.
Right, to figure things out. Amazing. Okay, so back to like how the current version like business model works. So it seems like you're mostly doing kind of like public shows and performances. How do you go about that? Like, how did that happen? Like, did they reach out to you? Did you reach out to them? Like, how do you guys fill your schedule with things like that?
Yeah, I mean, recently most of the stuff that we're doing is because of other people are reaching out to us. Now that could be
Okay.
through a connection of somebody that's found out about us, or
Mm-hmm.
word of mouth, or something like that. But we did get our start. The way that we got our start was, well, on the cruise ship to begin with, we had
Right.
an email list. So we had everybody filling up our email list and becoming patrons, even on Patreon with us right from the beginning. And so we had all these connections in these places, and these people were like, please come, we want you to perform in our hometown. And so the first year or so was like us doing basically performances essentially for free out of our own
Mm-hmm.
pockets, just getting out there and
Right.
staying on people's couches and
Right.
having house concerts and trying to build our list. So it definitely wasn't super lucrative in the beginning, but now
Mm-hmm.
that we've done it for a while, I would say the big thing that helped us get our price up was starting to do college shows.
Okay.
So we joined an agency for that. That's kind of dying down now, as those big conferences aren't kind of what they used to be.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so we did that, and now we're kind of looking at maybe starting to go to like Chamber Music America or things like that. But most of it is from our networks, or
Mm-hmm.
I will like I help with the booking, so sending out cold emails, or just
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out who does booking for different places to
Amazing.
get bookings.
Yeah. No, that's some great lessons there because like I see it was the same for like myself when I started out and this pattern I see a lot with musicians of yeah, you're going to be putting in that sweat equity, that time at the beginning. You're going to be sending out emails and sometimes things don't bloom
Mm-hmm.
into fruition right away, but it doesn't mean things aren't growing in the background. So where does that lead you to where you guys are now? Like what's your ideal show or like something that you're most excited for coming up?
Well, this past year we started building kind of our dream show,
Okay.
and we filmed it, and it's actually what we're marketing to cruises right now, just because they have the equipment to be able to do
Mm-hmm.
it. But
Mm-hmm.
essentially, when we were out on doing concerts with Seven Lions, we were blown away by how
Mm-hmm.
interactive the shows are with the DJs. So they have
Okay.
visuals, they have lights, they have lasers. Like it's amazing, and it's just somebody like up there dancing with
Right.
pressing buttons. So we are like, oh my gosh, how cool would this be if we did this but an actual string quartet,
Mm-hmm.
moving. So last year we created and filmed a demo show of it with visuals and lighting and everything like synced to Ableton tracks and stuff. So I think we really moving into the future. This weekend, for example, we're using Ableton in our shows
Mm-hmm.
to create more of an immersive experience. And so ideal shows for us would be at performing arts centers that can handle this
Wow.
capacity. So we're going to be working hard in the next few years to market to those venues. So yeah, that's something we're very, very excited about, and that we've been working hard on developing and learning all the pieces of how that fits
Yeah,
together.
I bet because like so much of what you're saying, I so new to me that I just need to ask probably some dumb questions here.
Oh,
So I
please,
bet learning
yeah.
is a big part of it here. So Ableton, did I say that right? I'm assuming
Ableton,
this is some
yeah.
Ableton. Is this a music
hmm
techie thing? What is that?
It is. So it's a software that it's a DAW, if you know what a DAW
Mm-hmm.
is. So it's a software that you can record into.
Mm.
A lot of DJs use Ableton
Mm-hmm.
because you're able to run it live and have live tracks going in. And also, it's a great interface for using samples and creating music out of that. And when I say samples, I mean like beats or little tiny slivers of from different songs and putting them into a new song. So that's why we're starting to use Ableton. When we go with recording, we use Logic
Mm-hmm.
Pro. We love that software. But yeah, so Ableton enables us to run tracks out into the audience, but also have a click track going in our ear so that we're able to sync
Mm.
everything with the tracks that are going on at the same time. It's like sounds complicated, but we're still
No, it
honestly
makes
learning
sense.
it. But yeah, it's it's
No.
it's cool stuff.
Got it. Got it. And yeah, because I have seen like your videos before and you guys have like, the phenomenal high tech looking shows. So that explains some of the magic behind the scenes there of how that works for us, acoustic
Yeah.
musicians who are scared to try those things. It looks like a lot of fun. So
Yes. And
that's
honestly,
awesome.
we started slow. We started
Mm-hmm.
analog. So we started with looping pedals. There's a pedal called the Jam Man that is the only one of its kind that the pedals are synced. So we
Oh.
each could be running loops off of a master, and our cellist was the master looper, to make sure that each loop was perfectly synced together. Because if you have just random pedals and you're looping, they would never align. You just can't
Yeah, right.
do that. So we for the longest time were doing that, and then we
Mm-hmm.
decided to start moving towards Ableton just because we weren't fully happy with the quality of the sound coming out
Mm-hmm.
of the Jam Man. It just didn't sound like perfectly like our acoustic sound. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's all kinds of ways to just dip your toe into it.
Right. Okay. Because there's so many different directions I want to go now. I need to stop and like think which way. That I'd love to hear more about the creative side. But let's stay on the just what we're looking at in terms of the venues and stuff. So the Performing Arts Center you mentioned is kind of like an ideal venue for you now. Why is that kind of your ideal performance venue at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, performing arts centers are great. They
Mm-hmm.
have a season, right? So they
Mm-hmm.
have ticket holders that are subscribed to that season. So there's not a lot of marketing. I mean, you have to market, but you're
Mm-hmm.
not working by yourself to fill
Mm.
like 2,000 seats or 300 or whatever the Performing
Got
Arts
it.
Center holds.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that's amazing about them is that they have quite a lot of technological capability. So a lot of them do have lighting just on site, and a team that they're used to working for. Like, for example, this weekend, we're going to be bringing our own soundboard. We're going to be bringing our own in-ear monitors. We're going to be running that stuff ourselves to simplify, because there's not like a sound person that's like used to running those types of things that will be on
Mm.
site with us. So it's lovely because those generally come with like their own tech teams. So you can send them a rider and they'll have everything set for you.
Interesting. Okay, again, uncovering more of the magic behind the scenes here. So, with the Performing Arts Center, it sounds like there's less pressure on the marketing and filling the seats. How does the relationship work otherwise? Is it sometimes that you are needing to sell tickets and you're getting paid based off of like part of the ticket sales, or like what sort of different frameworks do you see for this type of performance um, opportunity at these venues?
Yeah. So for those, their budgets are generally pretty high because they've already sold their seats, right? They've sold their
Right.
tickets. So yeah, it's not based on a cut of the door or anything. It's
Mm-hmm.
you get paid in advance your fee.
Got it. So that's the Performing Arts Center, and that's kind of why you guys prefer it, because that's kind of an agreed upon um, rate from the beginning that's
Yes.
higher, and also the seats are already filled for the most part.
Yeah, and honestly, like we haven't really gotten to get into that world so much yet, because since we just built this show, so
Mm-hmm.
that's what we're going to be marketing to, you know, in this
Got
coming
it.
year. But we've started to do research on it and how to get into that
Right.
world.
Amazing. Yeah, because that's the one thing that, I picked up about you guys right away is I bet you are spending a lot of time researching different things, like when it comes to how to make the music that you do and how to like market it and get the events and get the, revenue stream from Spotify and all that. Like how much of your time would you say is spent with like figuring things out? How much does that occupy for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of it. I would say we each have kind of our jobs. I'm like the
Right.
researcher. I love,
Okay.
it's my passion spot. I love to research. I also, my dad is works very closely with the quartet. He's the one that records us, and he loves to study this stuff as well and help us in any way he can. So
Mm-hmm.
he and I are just about to start a Spotify course. A lot of what we do is we look at how people are succeeding in the pop space rather than the
Okay.
classical space. So we
Hmm.
look, we studied with, we did a course with Taylor Swift's first manager, Rick Barker, to like way back when we first
Mm-hmm.
started. And now we're working with a guy named Chris Greenwood. He is a Christian rap artist, but he all by himself has, created 1 million monthly listeners on Spotify and makes consistently 20 to 30K a month just on streams.
Wow.
So like looking at those people who are doing things that you're like, oh, that's what I want. Take their
Right.
course, like it's an
Right.
investment, but um yeah, that's what we've always done is we've kind of looked at the people that are very successful um at having well-rounded business, and typically that is in the pop space. I feel
Right.
like most of classical musicians who are very successful, they do the competition route, and
Mm.
they win competitions. They're penniless for about 8 years, and then they hopefully get some good management from their competitions, and that's kind of how they work. So it's kind of reverse engineering it and seeing how can I be more in control rather than, you know, just putting all of my fate into a panel and what they think of me.
Amazing.
So, yeah, I think it's
and I
an
think
important thing to ask.
Yeah. And I noticed that too, like a lot of just the whole culture around classical musicians, it seems to be like, you know, it's just the way it is. You got to just like practice really hard and then, you know, you're just as good and virtuosus as everyone else on the panel, but sometimes it's just like basically chance that you get whatever that orchestra spot is or whatever that award is, just because everyone's doing the same thing. But when you find the back door and see, okay, how can I apply what they're doing in the pop world to what I'm doing and start to look at things from different angles, I see it seems like that's what's opened up doors for you. Is that kind of how you feel things have taken place?
Oh, definitely. I mean, especially like getting our social media off the ground. We had only 5,000 followers, and we had the Oslo Freedom Forum, Human Rights Foundation reach out to us, and we didn't even have that many followers, but because we knew what we should be posting, like, you know, we got gigs. Same with Seven Lines. They found us on Instagram. So just learning how to do that and be consistent about it definitely helped us a bunch and continues to help us.
Right. It's like the mindset, like the approach that you're taking to what you're doing. And even if it's, you know, just at the beginning stages, it really grows into something.
Yeah. And I mean, we're still on our journey too. Like we do a lot of work for the business for free.
Right.
So, yeah. It's, you know,
the long-term investments.
Time. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, that's because let's get into the teamwork stuff, because I'm sure a lot of that work that you're doing, like for free, it's like the long-term investments that, you know, maybe you don't see right away. So how do you all think the same way? Because it seems like you all work as a team. So do you all have that long-term perspective? Talk to me how you guys work together as a team and divvy things up and think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, we're all for firing on all pistons now, like for different members of Russ that looks different. So for me, I was able to cut out all my teaching last year, so I have a little bit more time on my plate to be able to do that, just because I'm able to do that because of my situation. But all of us give as much as we can give, and we do it because we love the quartet, so it's not for any monetary gain. I mean, of course, we're still making money, but but yeah, we try to look at it very objectively. We have a weekly meeting every single Thursday. It'll go anywhere from an hour to, I think last week was 2.5 hours, just because we had so much to cover. So that's where we kind of discuss what our calendar's like, coming ahead, what recording projects we have. Is there sync like film TV stuff that we need to start being aware of and trying to record for, like projects, you know, just keeping everything in line. And that's kind of, and then each of us kind of works day to day, and we have base camp, which we love, to keep everything organized and functional, and just we're constantly in contact.
Got it. Okay, so communication's a big part. What you mentioned something there. What's base camp? This might be another dumb question.
Base camp,
but...
yeah. It's kind of like Slack or what are the other ones? I don't even remember all the names. There's a lot of productivity softwares.
So I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. And we used to use Slack, but then they started enacting this like 2-month rule where like all your data would disappear after 2 months, and we were like, we can't do that. So now we're on Basecamp, and we do enjoy it quite a lot. It helps us stay organized. We were at first just using email, and that quickly turned into a disaster zone because there's just so much flying back and forth every day. So we'd be like, where's that link that you put? I don't know. You know?
Right.
So
yeah, for sure. Yeah. Slack is good. Like that's ended up being what like my old quartet ended up working with as well, just because email is a mess. And you
Yeah.
have clients doing email and it's just, too much. So totally know what you mean. So what are your different, you said that like you're more the researcher. How do you guys divvy up the roles that you do? Or is it pretty well defined or is it pretty flexible?
It's pretty well defined, I would say. So I handle researching. I handle our email list. If you're on our email list, which you should sign up, you'll get an email from me every other week about. And then I also help with all the tech writers, and I have all of the gear at my house. So, and I have all the merch. So I handle all of like the communicating with the venues on tech related things. I also have our mobile studio, so that I bring that when we're on the road and we want to record something. I'm trying to think what else I do. Just like a bunch of, just like filling in the cracks. I like to kind of keep an eye on everything. And then Sabrina, the other violinist, I would say she's kind of our manager. I would say she's very we kind of look at each of our strengths and we try to play off of those. So for her, she's very, very organized. She's like the most efficient person you've ever met in your life. Like she is never not working. For better or for worse. So she helps keep us on track. She helps make the meeting notes. She's also loves practicing and doing all that. So she likes to put bowings in the parts, which, by the way, we actually read off a score. We don't use individual parts ever. And that helps time-wise to keep us, we can see what everybody else has and just helps us learn quicker. She also does click tracks for our remote recordings. She's very, very good at it. There's actually a video that she just posted, tutorials on our tutorials on how to make a really good click track for a remote recording. So you should check that out. So she does that stuff. Rita handles the social media, so she does a lot of posting and helps keep our calendar organized on that front. And then Genevieve handles Patreon, which is a very, very important part of what we do and our income and what has helped keep us afloat even through a pandemic. So yeah, we all kind of try to play to our strengths. And of course, we all fill in different places and remote record and do everything else in addition to that as well.
Got it. And so you're all working together, have great team working skills. Is it like you guys are equal partners is what you consider yourselves
We are.
in the
We're
business?
an LLC.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So you're all in it together. That's amazing.
Yes. And everybody, that's kind of rare, I think, to have an LLC.
Yeah.
But that's how we do it.
Yeah. Doing something right. Okay. And what do you think has been like the thing that's kept you like made you able to work so well together? Is it just the chemistry like we were talking about before? Or is it that you guys strategize and set proper expectations? Or like, what is it that makes you guys work so well together, do you think?
Yeah. I think definitely communication. So, as I said before, it's never smooth. Like what we do is not easy. It's not been easy to stay together for 7 years. There's some times when we get really mad at each other, like sisters do, So just knowing how to take that out of a meeting and be like, I want to sit down and have a feelings talk about this. And just try to make sure everybody's heard and learn how to communicate on a level that's helpful. That's definitely the key to staying together. And I realized that it does take, like I said before, a magical combination of personalities, because there's some people that don't have the patience to deal with that. So we love and respect each other dearly. And it's always like, we try to balance that with also being a business and being like, yes, I know as your friend that this is hard right now, but also we need to figure out a way to make it work for the business. So yeah, we're not perfect, but just being able to have those conversations is definitely what has helped keep us going.
Right. Being honest about things. Yeah. So I'm curious because I'm just trying to keep track for myself. We had you guys are doing your own shows. You have Spotify, Patreon. Just because I'm sure the audience is curious, how does like your revenue stream, if it was a pie chart, like where do things like fall? Like what's your number one, or does it change depending on season? Because I know COVID obviously probably changed things too. But how does that work out for you guys percentage wise with those different avenues?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we're working on our financials right now because our financial like stuff has not been super like we have it all tracked, but we don't have like pie
Mm-hmm.
charts. So I don't know if I can tell you
Right, right.
percentages. Um,
Okay.
we're just about to
No
start
worries.
using software called Zoho Books. That's like QuickBooks to because we've
Right,
been doing
right.
it through spreadsheet this whole time. But I
Mm-hmm.
would say, we have a very consistent income through DistroKid, which is like your Spotify streaming income,
Mm.
as well as Patreon. So that makes up for, that's what we run the business off of. We're kind of toying with
Mm-hmm.
the idea of starting to take a cut from what we're making from performances and recordings to put into that as well. We're kind of figuring out, you know, how can we make more streaming income so we don't have to do that?
Right.
I don't know. We're figuring it out. And then when
Mm-hmm.
it comes to the income that we make off of shows and recordings, as of right now, we've been very blessed to have been able to keep all of that
Mm-hmm.
split in evenly um,
Mm-hmm.
and have that be payroll. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I would say we've got a consistent like 1,500 ish a month that we're running the business on,
Mm-hmm.
um, or maybe a little more. It depends.
Right.
Uh,
The reoccurring.
yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
then the other stuff it like fluctuates.
Right. Yeah, of course, with the depending what's going on with the schedule, which I know you guys have a full schedule, but that's something that you figured out that a lot of musicians haven't is just like those reoccurring revenue streams from something that's like more passive if it's like the
Yes, passive
Spotify for sure.
income. It's key.
Yeah.
You got to do it.
Exactly. Right, right. So I'm curious, like what is like if you guys were to had to just focus on one thing and to get the biggest output, like what inputs do you do that make the biggest outputs? I'm curious in the long term, ultimately. So is it just like
Mhm.
when you make a really good recording, like that has the biggest outputs for you? Is it when you like make something to go on social media that has the biggest return for you? What do you find has the biggest like return on investment for your time, so to speak?
Yeah. Um, well, I definitely say like we invested a lot this past year in creating that demo show.
Mm-hmm.
And we already got signed to an agency for that. We haven't started seeing a return, but I know the return is going to be great when we do
Mm-hmm.
start getting bookings. So that's like always invest in gear, solid gear
Mm-hmm.
that belongs to you, that's good quality. Like I want to say, I have my DPA mic that I use to record with. It's $600, right? It's not cheap, or 700 even
Mm-hmm.
now. But I've made thousands of dollars off of that mic, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And if I had just gotten a couple $100 mic that's kind of like a DPA, it's like it just you don't get the quality there.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say definitely like the investment of all the gear that I've put in is the
Mm-hmm.
biggest return back. And I know
Right.
it's like scary to invest in that stuff, but it's definitely worth it. And then also just investing in promo materials.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't stress enough like how many times we'll get asked, "Oh, can you send us like your materials? Like what is your show like? What is this like?" And it's like I have like 15 videos I could send them, and I'm so
Mm-hmm.
thankful that we have that, and
Mm-hmm.
and that we shelled out to make sure that those materials were like top tier so that people see them
Mm-hmm.
and they're like, wow, this is better than I thought it was.
Right, right.
um yeah, so I would definitely see that. I mean, social media, it's always hard. It's like you do spend a lot of time and you don't really know who's watching, and you don't necessarily see a dollar amount specific come
Mm-hmm.
in.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think it's still worth it. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like you guys have noticed a big return like on investment when it comes to like using your time and actually investing financially when you guys are just putting it back into making great music and having the gear to do it, and also the marketing side, being able to have quality promos to show people to actually sell it, what it is that you do, and have a way to capture that. So and those are the types of things that like they keep paying you, like you still have that video, it's not going anywhere, and you can keep sending that over and over again and keep getting new clients and cool opportunities
Yes.
because of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and same with
Amazing.
the website. Your website is so important. I mean, you can start without a
Mm-hmm.
website for a while, honestly. In the
Mm-hmm.
beginning, it's fine to not have that great of a website, but once you get going, like it's so important to really make sure you've got yourself and your brand represented well. And we recently shelled out to have our website done custom, and
Mm-hmm.
again, biggest like best thing we could have done, you know?
Right.
So yeah, just looking that and trying not to be cheap with yourself, you know.
Right. Invest in yourself. Yeah.
Mhm.
For sure. So I'm curious about, because you mentioned that you guys record remotely, and first off, you're a long distance quartet for the most part, which is like also amazing, like how you guys make that work. So when you record remotely, like the recordings that I hear on Spotify, is that remote or is that together, or how does remote recording work? Help me understand this world.
Yeah. So yeah, I feel like remote recording has been very taboo in the past. It's like, oh, that's not going to sound together.
Right.
But you'd actually be surprised. 2020 rolled around, and of course the pandemic and lockdown, and we didn't see each other for like a year. So we were like, what can we
Mm-hmm.
do? We need to pivot.
Mm-hmm.
And we started remote recording and figuring out the intricacies of that and how to create a product that was high quality and accessible. Remote recording is much cheaper than flying a quartet in and having them in a studio.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of things that contribute to that. Of course, have to learn how to use DAW and how to edit your tracks. The biggest, most important thing for us that we allows us to play together is the click track, which I had mentioned before that Sabrina did a tutorial on. And these click
Mm-hmm.
tracks aren't just like 1, 2, 3, 4, like we're talking about
Mm-hmm.
building rubatos in and how to do that effectively. So when you're just listening, it's almost like you're watching a conductor and it's like you can just follow
Wow.
it. So that, paired with the fact that we've played over 1,000 concerts together, we kind of can anticipate, like Sabrina and I are little violin shadows of each other. So we kind of know, violins have a lot of harmonies together. We know how the other is going to play it. And
Oh, wow.
if we're not fully matching, we're like, oh, I bet she's doing that. So I'm going to do it that way. We record one at a time. Sabrina usually goes first because she's the one doing all the logistics with the session and everything. So she'll go first.
Mm-hmm.
Then we try to get cello down just for intonation. And then Rita and I will go in between one at a time. And if you do go on Spotify, our most recent release, most recent release that actually just dropped today, Dragon Roost Island. It's a collaboration with the Zelda reorchestrated team. So it's Zelda music, was fully recorded remotely. And I
What?
would love to see if you can tell.
Ah,
And
that's
then
amazing.
the previous release to that was Call Me Maybe, which was just
Mm-hmm.
string quartet, also recorded remotely specifically for Bridgerton. We got the call for music, and we weren't going to be together, so we were like, okay, let's just get this recorded remote. And then you'll see our ATLYS, like our quilted ATLYS covers. We've got, I think, Luxury Car, Serioso. There's a couple others, all recorded remotely. Our Christmas singles also recorded remotely. I mean, obviously, we love to be in the room together, but we have figured out how to make it work. And you can't really tell, I don't think. My dad says he can
No.
tell because the energy is not quite the same because we do play off of each other's energy. But
Right.
yeah,
No.
it's been a
I would
game
say,
changer for us.
yeah, don't undersell it, because like people need to check these out, because yeah, I was just getting pumped like before this interview, listening to what you guys do, and it's just so energetic. Like I didn't think that the remote recording was what you did for making your own singles. I thought it was maybe just for working with other people, because I'm really impressed with how it works, and I know that I'm not going to be able to just understand it perfectly in the short amount of time we have here, but I'd be very curious about that. So did you all have to like invest into making a good studio to be able to record in, and what did that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned we all record off of DPA mics.
No worries if you can't find it.
It's this little mic right here. You see them on TV, right? For
Right.
The Voice and American Idol, the Grammys, the Oscars. They're all playing with these little mics, and we play live with them too. And they clip onto the violin. We record actually with them clipped to our stands, but when we're playing live, obviously we have them clipped to our instrument. It's a $600 or $700 mic, but the beautiful thing about it is the sound quality is quite close, like, to how your sounds actually sounds, and also it's directional, so very little external sound will get picked up with this little guy. And so, you know, you can see my curtains. These are just actually a new addition because I record in a sunroom with windows all over the place. So for the longest time, I had sound panels up in front of me when I recorded. But yeah, I mean, you'd be surprised how you can really make any space work if you just pay attention. Like, obviously, you don't want to be playing into a window. It's going to be very echoey.
Right.
But just if you even like put a blanket up in front of you, you know, it doesn't always look. My studio did not look like what it does when we first started recording.
Right.
So yeah, but I would say, like, you know, now we've got our form on our website, contact form for doing remote recording. But also, if you want to just get started by yourself, there's places like Sound Better that we all record on. They're like Airbnb for recording, basically.
Oh, interesting.
So I get some work through there as well. And I think there's a couple other ones too. But yeah, it's very lucrative, you know?
Yeah.
And anyone can do it.
So interesting. It sounds it's so convenient too, because there's so much friction usually like around a team getting together and like making music, which is, you know, all what we want to do. But for some reason, it's just like, you know, everyone's always busy and things don't happen. And as much as we want to, it doesn't happen as much as, you know, unless you're like you guys and are really all on the same page. I find that teams have a hard time getting together and making music. So I'm sure that would lower the resistance for a lot of people if they had, you know, a way to record remotely, and also a way to, like, you know, have another revenue stream from it, because, you know, people can hire them to, you know, do remote recordings without needing to drive to a studio.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And, you know, it's just such a cost saver for the client in the end. I mean, we're not cheap, but we're certainly cheaper than if you have to pay for an engineer and studio time. So, you know.
Right.
Yeah, it's a very cool thing.
Yeah. And that's just something you guys kind of happened upon almost.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, in 2020, we were, you know, all apart, and we decided we're going to start making videos. We're just going to start making videos, just keep something going, and we're going to record them in different places, and we're going to sync them together. And in the beginning, it was super like I would literally record while I was filming the video. And they'd be like, is this together? I don't know. And then people started watching them and picked up stream. And then we started having people reach out to us to do remote recording. We were like, what? Okay. And then we just decided to turn it into a business because we enjoyed doing it. So yeah, it's kind of organic the way it started.
Yeah. Your guys' willingness to like use tech and like, you know, learn new things, I think has opened a lot of doors to different ways you can work together and, add value to people. So that's super cool to see. I'm curious if you could like put it in a nutshell. I know there's probably a lot that goes into it, but what's your process from beginning to end to make music? Like make a new, I don't know, cover or something original? Like how does the idea start? How does the arrangement get made? And then what's post-production look like? What goes behind the scenes when it comes to you guys making a new single?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's changed a lot over the years. I mean, when we first
Mm-hmm.
started, it was like, okay, here we go. We got to build a concert, right? So which songs do
Mm-hmm.
we like? Which songs do we think people would like to hear?
Mm-hmm.
And we're all going to write them. And we wrote them within a month, and then we came together in 2 weeks and put together our first show. Now,
Mm-hmm.
how we do it now is much more of a trickle because,
Mm-hmm.
we now have music that we can perform. And a lot of the music that we now start adding to our shows is because it was either commissioned or like what I was saying for Bridgerton, put out a call. So, we've put arrangements together for that. We're recording an album this August that is fully classical, and it was a fully commissioned work. And then, we have a ska piece that's like off the wall. It's so cool. It's on YouTube. It's called A Better Place, A Better Time, that was commissioned by
Mm-hmm.
somebody who loves ska punk. Like, I would have never come up with that, you know? And
Right.
it's one of our favorite things to play now, you know?
Right.
And same with the EDM music. Like, we would have never come up with that, but it was commissioned for us to do that. And so now we're playing
Hmm.
that. So typically what happens in that process is that, we get the call for a score, and most often now we ask one of our arrangers, Ari Fisher or Andrew Vogt, to arrange them for us or write them. Although
Mm-hmm.
we have started writing some originals of our own, and still occasionally we'll write a cover if we feel super passionate about it. So they'll write it, and then we'll sit down and we'll start playing it, and we'll tweak it to, you know, this is not playable. We're gonna,
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna shift these
Right.
around, or I think this would sound better on the instrument this way. We're gonna swap some notes around, do that, and then we perform it a bunch, as much as we can before we record,
Hmm.
because we just like it to marinate a little bit and really get like feeling comfortable about it before we record.
Right.
Versus like our first album, we hadn't played it very much, and we were like, we just got to
Mm-hmm.
get something out there, so we're gonna go
Right.
into Jinty's parents' basement and record it,
Right.
so our process has definitely evolved, from where it
Right.
started that way.
Got it. Very cool. I'm wondering if you can quickly just touch on your guys' approach to marketing in general, because I know that you guys are strategic. You mentioned an email list. I'm curious what else is going on behind the scenes and kind of how you strategize that.
Yeah. Gosh, where to start? I guess email, I would stress, is like so important. Like, I'm I was blown away this past week. We had just released Call Me Maybe, our cover
Mm-hmm.
of that, and it didn't get on a playlist, an editorial playlist. So it really didn't have that many streams. And I think we
Mm-hmm.
were under 1,000. And
Mm-hmm.
so my dad was like, Jinty, you should really like start talking to your email list more about helping you with that, because I bet they would.
Mm-hmm.
We've got like a
Mm-hmm.
little over 2,000 people on our email list. So I wrote,
Mm-hmm.
I had a series of emails that I sent out, and I said, guys, I'm so excited. We just released this. I had asked them to
Mm-hmm.
pre-save earlier. We put out the call for pre-saves. We put down some money for ads to give it a big boost, but whatever reason, it just didn't get chosen this time. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm wondering if you guys can help us get it boosted so it might get on a playlist. And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, well, we're just going to see how this goes. And within the span of a week, we went up. My challenge was for us to get to 2,000 streams. We got to 3,500. People were
Wow.
listening on repeat, just like all over the
Oh.
place. And I
Wow.
was just blown away, like that people
Mm-hmm.
cared that much to go on their devices and have them streaming on repeat. So like the email list is so, like, you don't get that on social media unless you're
Right.
like an influencer on on TikTok, you know? You don't really get that. So yeah, developing your email list, putting it out at shows. You know, we have email grabbers. So like I have like a tutorials video on scales, and I will give people my fingerings for scales in exchange for their email. And I've gotten over 1,000 emails that way, and add them to our list. So that's a big part of it. Then when it comes to the rest of the socials, we have a social media calendar. And lately, we've been really trying to bring the effort down and try to be efficient. So if we know a single's coming out, then we try to plan ahead, like we've got like 4 or 5 posts to promote that, and then like a couple afterwards as well, and schedule them in the calendar strategically. Then also bumping our shows, bumping our videos that we have coming out. We try to make it as efficient as possible so that it's not so stressful to come up with like all this random content, you know? So yeah, most of what we post has to do with what we're doing at the time.
To keep it more natural and just kind of not have to be another thing, because I know social media is just like can be a bit exhausting to keep up with. So it makes sense that you want to keep doing posts that are around what's actually going on. So that makes a lot of sense. I'm curious because you mentioned that like you got a lot of emails from tutorial. Was that YouTube? So do you have like your YouTube channel kind of feeding into your email list? Is that the strategy to grow the email list?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Smart.
So we have a couple videos that have been picked up in the algorithm, and we also studied. We took a course on how to use keywords in our titles to get them ranking top on searches. It's hard for your music. Is that for YouTube? Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Interesting.
Yes. Very important. You know, when it comes to your original music or covers or stuff, it's hard to rank in the algorithm. So doing tutorials was kind of our way of, you know, what are people searching for, right? What do they need? What do they really want to see? And that's kind of how we hacked that, and we're able to start grabbing emails from that.
Got it. So would you say that YouTube is your most useful social media platform in that case then? Because, you know, you have that ability for people to search and continue to find the content?
Yeah, I mean, in a way, it definitely is. I would say like our Instagram probably is the top of our minds. That's like where we have the most engagement, and I wouldn't say YouTube is as consistent with that, but when you bring, you know, email list is money in the end. It is dollars. It's people who want to build a relationship with you. So that is definitely very important.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, so you have the YouTube channel, and Instagram is where you mentioned that people are most engaged. Was that it?
Yes, and then we have TikTok. We've got Facebook. Our Facebook is also our like diehard fans, I feel like, are on Facebook. I love them.
Right.
So
interesting.
Yeah, but it's hard. I mean, the algorithm's constantly changing. I can't say that we're like the most successful people in the world at social media. I think the important thing and healthy thing to do with social media and with email lists is people always freak out like, oh, people are going to unfollow or people are going to leave my email list. Like, that is actually not a bad thing, because it means that you're clearing out the people that aren't engaged, so your percentages of engaged people will actually go up. So that's an important thing to remember there.
That's an important lesson for sure, to just not get discouraged, because I know sometimes we can look at things the wrong way when actually it's a good thing. But it's the reality that people are always going to leave your email list. You're always going to get no's. There's always going to be, we just see like the outside of what things look like, and it looks like success is easy. But, if you rewind and see what got there, there's often a lot of failures and, rejections. That's not, across the board for everyone who's built something. So I'm just curious, like, what would you feel is the most important lesson you guys have learned working together and, building ATLYS?
Probably like perseverance through like when you feel like things are just like not going well, you gotta
Right.
get through those times, and you just gotta like
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of times when I'm like, I don't know if I can do that in time, or I don't know if I can write that, I don't know if I have that in me, I don't know if I can learn how to
Mm-hmm.
use all this tech. Like I like
Mm-hmm.
to equate it to like, I always envision myself like being asked to fit through a keyhole, like as
Mm.
myself. And,
Right.
you know, the only way to go is forward, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you just gotta keep going one step at a time, like 1% a
Mm-hmm.
day,
Mm-hmm.
like just the tiniest bit. Even if you do one little thing a day, it does add
Mm-hmm.
up. And being brave in that sense, to keep going, and also just um, being a really good listener, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's a lot of things that you don't want to hear. Like right now, we're going through some
Mm-hmm.
consulting, so we're looking at our
Mm-hmm.
whole business. A lot of it's
Right.
uncomfortable.
Mm.
A lot of it's like, wow, we suck. you know?
Just being honest
And you
and
come
like
out and you're like, oh my
listening and
gosh, like I'm not doing
yeah.
anything right. But like taking
Mm-hmm.
that, and rather than just like putting a blinder up and being like, I don't want to hear that right now, just being like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm going to take this and I'm going to see how to balance it, and create something better and get better,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's just a tiny step. Um, so yeah, and then, same goes with communication. And
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be a lot of things, there's a lot of things. Sometimes I don't want to hear it when people say I'm too intense, you know?
Right.
And me just like, I have to go and I have to take that internally and be like, okay, I'm sorry. It was too intense, you
Right.
know? So,
Amazing. No,
yeah.
those are good lessons. Like, I mean, yeah, it comes down to, I guess, being able to listen and take feedback and persevere to improve on that feedback and, continue to figure things out. Because, yeah, going to that, I'm also curious, like, because we talked about a lot of things that you had to figure out. And since you're the researcher of the group, I'm curious, what was the hardest thing to figure out, as it were,
Oh my gosh.
when it came to like either the tech or the marketing or getting this type of client? What was the hardest but most rewarding thing for you guys to figure out?
I think the most proud I am of us is when we were on the cruise ship, and
Mm-hmm.
essentially things fell through, and the person who was supposed to be doing all of our engineering and providing all our gear just dropped out, and we were left with
Mm-hmm.
nothing. And we had to learn without internet how to record ourselves and use
Mm.
Sibelius and do all of
Mm-hmm.
these things. And um, I'd go on WhatsApp, because that's what you do on ships, because it uses the least amount of data for a call. And I would call my dad, and he would look it up while I was on the phone with him. Oh, have you tried this? Have you tried that? Like just those instances where you're like, at that point we were completely in the dark. We didn't know. We knew how to use our instruments, and that's about it. So,
Mm-hmm.
just like, I'm so incredibly proud of us for persevering through that moment where, it wasn't comfortable. We didn't,
Mm-hmm.
maybe weren't making the best quality things, but by golly, we were doing it anyways. And, it takes
Mm-hmm.
getting through those moments to learn and get better and accomplish things. So now when somebody talks about gear, I'm like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. But
Mm-hmm.
it took being uncomfortable for quite a long time and having several panic attacks before shows about tech. And, you know, uh, it takes a lot of learning and patience.
Right. No, that's
Yeah.
good. And what's next for you guys? Like, what's the next big goal, or where do you guys see yourself in a year or so?
Yeah. Well, we've got some concerts coming up this season. This weekend we're
Mm-hmm.
going to be in Iowa. I don't know when this is
Mm-hmm.
going to be released, but we've got some dates in Geneva, New York. We're going to be performing in New York City, hopefully the first time ever, in August.
Exciting.
Really excited to book that
Mm-hmm.
show. And then release wise, we've got the entire Zelda Wind Waker album coming out in April, I believe. And that's full length. It's going to be out on vinyl. It's all recorded. And we're super stoked for everybody to hear that and for us to be able to start performing that and adding that to our shows. Yeah, and then just, I mean, we're constantly like releasing and doing something. So
Right.
yeah.
Amazing.
We just want to keep building and yeah.
So everyone who's listening has to get on the email list and to stay in tune for when all of this is being released and stay on top of the new things coming out. So that's super exciting. Just to wrap up here, where can people find you guys and follow you guys and see when you're coming to their town to do a performance? What's the best way to follow you guys?
So we are on Spotify, ATLYS, ATLYS. Our shows are also on our Spotify profile and also on our website, www.atlysmusic.com, ATLYS music.com. And all of our handles are ATLYS music at ATLYS Music.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Jinty. This was so much fun. I know I learned a lot. I know the audience has as well. So thank you again. And yeah, let's do it again sometime. Thanks so much for sharing.
Absolutely.